And welcome back to the Brac Shop and Halloween, the Celtics' tradition of their new year. And if you want to know about the origins, jack-o'-lantern, trick-or-treat, and more, stay tuned. Halloween, as we know it, actually started with the Celts. It was an old Celtic pagan tradition that started over thousands of years ago, and it would celebrate the end of the harvest and the end of summer, and to welcome in the long winter nights and the darkness. And it was also a period where they thought that the barriers between the other world and this world were the thinnest, and the spirits from the other world could actually come into this one as well. And it wasn't mainly the bad spirits, it was mainly the ancestors that had passed on were able to come back and visit the living. But also, just to be on the safe side, they did used to light bonfires, also to celebrate the end of the harvest. And they apparently, from different research, they did dress up in costume to frighten the bad spirits away. And the Celts actually knew it as Samhain. Now, Samhain was, as I said, a pagan festival. And in the 700s, Pope Gregory III actually incorporated it into the Christian religion, and also classified the 1st of November All Saints' Day. Then later in 1000 AD, November the 2nd was All Souls' Day. So basically it was 3 days of celebrations, because originally this was the Celtic New Year. In fact, their day started at sunset, and the year started on the 31st of October. And there'll be celebrations over the 3 days. Now, All Saints' Day was known as All Hallows Mass. And so the 31st of October was known as All Hallows Eve. And over time, it evolved to be known as Halloween. So that's how we ended up with Halloween. And over the time, the different traditions evolved to now we have witches and ghouls, jack-o'-lantern, and trick-or-treat. And trick-or-treat actually had its predecessor back in the 1400s, and this was actually known then as souling. And it was people would knock on people's doors and ask for soul cakes, and in return they would say prayers for their deceased ones so they could get into heaven quicker. The idea was that souls would be stuck in purgatory, and the more prayers that was said for them, the faster they would get into heaven. And so they would give people soul cakes so they could say more prayers for them and help them to get into heaven. And over the years, different variations of that have happened as well, like mumming, where actually it was slightly different, where they would actually go around and sing and people would give them money or food. And the trick-or-treat as we know it today actually started in the earlier 20th century, and it was a bit different because it seemed to be a night where people could play pranks. People would find carts on top of haystacks, gates would be open and animals would be let out. And by the 1930s, in fact 1933 was the height of it, it actually evolved into vandalism. And so to stop all that, they decided to make it a more of a communitive effort and get people to knock on doors, and they would be rewarded by giving them sweets. And that way it stopped the vandalizing and started trick-or-treating. In fact, the first mention of it was in 1939 in a magazine, and then it got more popular. In fact, it got very popular in 1952 when Disney released their Halloween cartoon featuring Donald Duck and his 3 nephews. And that's how trick-or-treating has evolved over the years. And I had the chance to chat with Tim Ahern, who is an American and grew up in America, so he knows the American tradition quite well. And over the years, Halloween is actually spreading across the world because decades ago, very few other countries celebrated Halloween as we know it. So we'll go over now and have a chat to Tim about Halloween. So Tim, what's your impression of Halloween?
Coming from America, Halloween is a big deal, especially when you're a young person. And personally, I do think that it's Halloween is a wonderful, wonderful thing for young children.
Not for grown-ups.
Well, maybe no. Well, not that it's bad, but I think as a young child, and again from experience, 5, 6, 7 years old, you get the chance to dress up. You can be a ghost, a pirate, a ballerina, be anyone you want to. And at that age, that's important, and to be able to become anyone you wanted to be, and put on that costume, or just put a sheet over your head, cut out a couple of holes, and be a ghost.
Yeah,
which is what I did a couple of times. And yeah,
was that your costume of preference? The ghost?
Well, I think I probably couldn't afford the fancy cowboy costume or astronaut or something. But no, it's just as a kid, it was just something that you knew was coming eventually. And at about maybe 6 or 7 or 8, those years, you'd go out with your parents or your friends, and people expected you to come, so they weren't surprised. You weren't told to leave the premises. It was just a wonderful, wonderful evening.
And you always got sweets.
Yeah, well, you got sweets, but growing up in Boston with a lot of apartment buildings, sometimes people wouldn't have sweets, and they'd give you a few coins.
Oh, that's probably
so
better.
In fact, that happened quite frequently, because the people felt that they were obligated to give you a little something, and they'd say, "Do you mind?" And they maybe 15 cents or 20 cents or something, but usually at the end of the evening you'd have maybe $1 or so in change, plus your bag of sweets. But it was just a magical, really fun evening for kids. I think a few years go by that kind of don't do it anymore, but those years I think it's wonderful.
Right.
Again, because for that evening you can be anyone you want to be. Your favorite television star, or like I said, astronauts and ballerinas.
Right. So you didn't have to be like a ghost or a mummy or a Dracula.
No, you didn't. But I think the boys, and I think myself included, you did kind of like being like Dracula was a good one, But you wouldn't have the costume. You'd make it yourself. Paint a little black and red blood
and plastic fangs.
Get it for about a quarter, 25 cents at the little shop. Yeah, and you'd be those kinds. Those are the really fun characters. But again, cowboys and pirates were fun too. But yeah, the scary ones would be good. Or Frankenstein, if you could get it.
And did you was there a time where you didn't get any treats and they wanted a trick? Or they always had something for you?
I think most of the time they did. I think there may be a couple of times when people would say that because they were kind of just being a little cool, and they'd say, "Okay, well, what are you going to do for a trick then if you don't get the treat?" And then I think we'd say like, "Well, we'll throw a marshmallow or throw an egg or something." No, we'd just laugh. There were a couple of people, but it was always said in jest, like, "What's the treat if I don't get?" They'd say, "What? Well, what would be the trick be?" And they would say, maybe nothing bad or something. When you were small, you played it safe because you knew there was candy there. But I can't remember as a kid in Boston those years, because it was Halloween and people expected it. They had something for you, a little bit, whether it be a little tiny little chocolate bar or Hershey's Kisses or something. And if people were home and didn't have anything, if you went to places and there were no lights on or doors didn't open and it was quiet, you just you stop knocking. And I think sometimes maybe people weren't prepared and they would do that, but it didn't matter because there were so many doors to knock on. You just kind of carry on to the next one.
Yeah, and everyone was expecting it.
Oh yeah, but everyone was expecting it. Yeah.
And you mentioned apartment blocks. So back in those days, was it easy to sort of like just go into the apartment block?
Yes.
There was less security.
Less security, yes. You might have had a buzzer in some of them, but you could get in the front door, and this is in the Back Bay in Boston, right in the city. But you could get in and then walk through to then just go floor to floor, and
people were expecting you anyway.
Yeah, and with 20 to 30 apartments on 4 or 5 floors, I mean, you'd be in there for a while, and you'd come out,
make a killing.
Yeah. But again, and when I think back to a lot of those people, there were quite a few weren't home because those were working people, and maybe they weren't home, but that you'd find some people not answering those doors. But again, it didn't matter. You just go on to the next one. So, but
there
again,
were so many doors.
Yeah, so many doors.
And how many would be in the group?
Well, I think the first year or two, it'd probably be with you. I remember with my parents, but then you'd go with 2 or 3 friends as a couple of years went by, and then it became more of a friends going out and.
As you got older.
Older up until 10 or 12
up.
or 14. And you always stayed, you wouldn't go too far from the neighborhood and all that, you know.
So you virtually were in the neighborhood, so everyone virtually knew you anyway. So to speak.
Yes and no, yeah, but you'd venture outside in the city again because you can, it doesn't take, if you're living amongst these apartment blocks and buildings, it doesn't take long for you to be away from the people that you know probably more, but it was all expected. So you'd see troops of kids going around, and it happened. It's just, and again in America, it's just it's always been a legitimate holiday, you know. So surprises. So you know.
And what time would you venture out to start trick or treating?
Well, I think as young kids, as soon as it got dark, you wanted to go, but it was best to wait a little bit, you know, because it always was be like the little kids would go first. You know, the parent with the real young little one, you know, couldn't talk. But you know, the big kids, you know, the 7 or 8 year olds,
They'd have the later session.
Yeah, we'd go out a little bit later when it's kind of everything's cooking, you know. It just felt, I didn't want to go out too early, and plus it was kind of fun being out a little bit as it got a little bit later, meaning 7 or 8 o'clock at night, because of course you know, that time of year in October in Boston it would get dark around about 4:30 or so.
Oh, that early?
Well, maybe a bit later.
Yeah,
but
5, 6.
Yeah, but it started to. But and you didn't want to wait until it was more fun in when it was dark. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow. Do you find because you've been in the UK for a while, there's a difference in Halloween? Like maybe the UK doesn't celebrate Halloween at all, or?
Well, I think it's celebrated, but not nearly as much as from what I remember it.
You would really feel it in back home in the States.
Yes, yeah.
And here it's just another evening.
Well, yeah, another evening. I mean, the town I live in is a nice little well-to-do town, and it seems as if you see kids on the streets starting at about 5:30 till for an hour or two. And,
okay.
And they ask for things, but there's not nearly the expectation or the number of people. Excuse me, and it seems mostly some younger kids with their parents. Going out, but it happens, but it's not nearly as full on.
Yeah, it'd be really quite interesting to go to the States just to experience the real Halloween.
Yeah, because when we get older, you know, past the teenage years, nearly 20, Halloween is a great night. A lot of grown-ups have Halloween parties.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a costume or masquerade ball, as you call it, or it gives a reason for everyone to dress up, and you know, the adults.
The parties change.
Yeah, and that's and they can be quite fun. I've been to some of those. You know, it's.
Yeah, because we didn't celebrate Halloween either, but I remember. I was sitting in the car, and it was the sun was setting, and I was sitting in the car, and just in the distance, as it was twilight, all of a sudden there was like these 6 little ghouls just running across the road behind each other. I mean, you couldn't even set it up like for a film. It was just perfect. How they just ran across the road, with one with a cape and one all in black, and like a witch going by. It was just so fantastic.
You know, it's great. When I do have 2 children. And when we first moved here to England, my daughter was 4, and my son was 4. My son was less than a year old. So, in the ensuing years, we did do Halloween here with him. My wife and I would go out with him, with William and Olivia, to celebrate Halloween. And it was always a little. And again, compared to America, it was a much more subdued. You know, it was very quick. You know, 45 minutes or so, and just went to. And it was always. The few years we did it was the same neighborhood, because the people were expecting the kids. So, but it was we were out and back home pretty quickly. It wasn't the same, but they had a ball, and again, it is celebrated a bit, at least from in towns like this, I think.
Yeah, and I think the sort of like the word is spreading out more. So like you're seeing Halloween merchandise in shops now.
Yeah,
things like that.
You're absolutely right, and the pumpkin displays and all that, and it used to be part of it also when I was growing up. It wasn't just the trick or treating, but before and after, there would be the hot chocolate and maybe a piece of pumpkin pie.
Was that part of
well,
the?
yeah, it was part of the festivities. Was well, you'd come back with all the candy, of course, and wanted to gorge on that. But beforehand, maybe hot chocolate or apple cider or something, and try to make it a little bit of a fun before and after.
Because you don't hear about the
No.
hot chocolate and the apple cider
No, no.
and the pumpkin pie.
Yeah, now that's very Thanksgiving-y,
Oh.
but or apples and things. Yeah, well, you just try to give a little to the kids, like I said before, they go out and when they come back, a little something. Yeah, so it was really it was a real special day, and it probably still is in America, for all I know.
Oh yeah. From what I hear,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an American tradition now, like Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but you're right. The stores, you go into your local shops, the big shops, and they do have the big candy displays and and the pumpkins and
Yeah. So did you do the pumpkin lanterns as well, carving out the pumpkin?
Not usually. I think we did it once or twice, but
You left that for Mum. She wanted to do it.
that was. You mean as a kid?
Yeah, as a kid. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I don't. That was too much work, And I think early on my dad or some carved out one. I can't remember, it never looked like they do in you see
In
them
the
with
shops.
the perfect shops with the faces, the eyes and things,
Yeah.
they wouldn't look like eye holes and mouth holes. I think I've tried it myself a couple
really?
times, but it never came out.
It's not that simple.
No, you've got to, no. I guess the people at the flower shops, those places, can probably know how to make a proper jack-o'-lantern.
Probably, yeah.
Most parents can't. You end up looking at just a big pumpkin with some square or holes.
And do you know the story about jack-o'-lantern?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Well, should I? I probably should be.
I don't know. I don't know how much regular people know about all these Halloween traditions.
No.
Yeah, apparently he was a mischievous character and used to play a lot of pranks on everybody. And apparently, what was the story? I think he was so mean and bad that the devil wanted to take him as well.
Oh, really?
But he was so. This is in a nutshell. He was so bad that the devil didn't even want him either.
The jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah, and so he kicked him out, and so he still kept playing his pranks and everything, and then he finally died, and he was going to go up to heaven, but because he was so bad, heaven wouldn't allow him in.
Well, I should hope not. After that.
So he went down to hell, and actually that's it. There was a story that apparently he tricked the devil, because the devil, actually I think the devil did want him, but he tricked him by doing a bargain that he cornered the devil, if you ever could, cornered the devil, and it twisted his questions around, and so it ended up that the devil agreed that he would never take him into hell.
Oh, right.
So when he wasn't allowed into heaven, he went down to hell, and the devil wouldn't take him. And so what the devil did was gave him an ember, a burning ember from hell, to give it to him, and he apparently put it in a turnip. Apparently it wasn't the pumpkin back then; it was a turnip that he carved
Turnip, yeah.
eyes out. And so he put the ember in the turnip, and he goes wandering in the Neverland, so to speak, because he's not here, he's not there, he's just wandering for eternity. And he carries his lantern as to light the way.
Really?
That's what I've been finding in the research. And apparently, I think it's there is a place, it's probably Ireland, I think, that these mysterious lights just appear. And I think it's the gases. It's like marshlands, swamplands, and these lights appear in the distance, and they say it's the jack-o'-lantern appearing over there.
Oh, that's interesting. It's had an image of being somewhat sinister, or I never heard that kind of evil though, like the pact with the devil, but he turned out okay in the end, after all, lighting the way.
Well, he's lost, and
that sounds like a story that could come out of Ireland. Yeah, something, right?
Yes. Yes. And I'm just thinking about because apparently, do you know the origins of Halloween?
I don't.
Yeah, it's a Celtic tradition apparently. It's called Samhain, and it's
Samhain?
Samhain. Celtic, and it was supposed to be. It was one of the many pagan rituals they had through the year, and this was to mark the end of the summer harvest and the end of the light season, and welcoming in the dark season because the nights were getting longer.
Well, that makes sense. Now that
Yeah.
just on that alone seems to make I understand that.
Yeah, and it was. And they used to have bonfires, and there's different stories for the bonfires.
But it's funny. See, as American, I never learned the history. I mean, you just kind of do this.
Yeah, you just celebrate.
but there has to be something also with all these goblins and creatures, and people walking around, as to why there would be this.
Well, I don't know, because I'm trying to look into it and all the research, and apparently it was the time when it was basically the end of the summer. The winter's coming on, and we're going into winter, and things were dying, and so that's when they think more on the darker side and the spirits.
Oh, I see.
And it was also a time when they would remember the ancestors as well, the past ancestors.
Right.
And for some reason, and you find this in a lot of cultures, like the Mexicans' Day of the Dead, even the Chinese, they've got something, they go by the lunar calendar. So I think it's like the 7th moon, actually, which is around this time as well, that they say that it's when the spirits from the other side can actually come back.
Oh, right,
and they come back like for 3 days. Well, the Eastern culture says that as well. They come back for 3 days, and so you make sure the house is clean and everything like that, so, and everything's spick and span, so they can't actually get caught or do anything bad to you as well.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But even with the Halloween tradition, I mean, from what I heard, because it's the time when the spirits come back, one version I've heard that people get dressed up in as goblins and ghosts is that the spirits won't recognize them as humans, and so won't disturb them.
Well, you sound like you know your Halloween.
I'm beginning to.
You're not making this up, are you?
No.
Well, you sound pretty up to snuff.
I've
with
been
it,
doing
I
a
have
bit
to
of
say.
research.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually makes you, and going back to
Well-
the Celtic tradition, this was like their New Year's Eve, welcoming in the New Year, because their New Year started now. In fact, their day started at sunset. So yeah, I feel this year I'm really getting excited about Halloween. Actually.
Well, it can be fun. I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, in the city. I mean, you live in London. I mean, is in the city? Is it is there any kind of Halloween theme at any of the bars or the clubs?
For the grown-ups, yeah, in the bars and the clubs,
yeah.
there's always a Halloween theme, and you'll find people dressed up in Halloween costumes.
Yeah, it can be fun in that sense. Yeah, if you take it, it can be fun and reason to have a little bit of a celebration and
yeah. But I think it's still I think it's still a while yet before you get the kids all coming out doing the trick and treating.
I think so. I think
it's just the security thing, really, that people worry about. What are they? What sort of sweets? What sort of treats they're going to get, and if they really are treats and not a trick.
Well, I know on occasion here, I sense not everyone thinks it's the right thing to do either. Some people think it's a lot of hogwash. That's the sense I think. Yeah, I've got that here. That some people think
it's American.
Yeah, it's very American, and what are kids doing, begging for candy and things like that. You know, you just sense it that it's not. Well, it just isn't accepted as much. But that's cool too. It's just.
But I think the new generation's beginning to realize how fun it is, and
they don't take it so serious. So there's a little bit of fun. I mean.
It's the next thing to Christmas.
Yes, so true.
So, thanks very much for telling me the American side of Halloween, because not actually being on that side of the world during Halloween, you just don't get to really experience Halloween. All you see is what you see in the movies and on the TV.
Well, again, I'll say again, as a kid, I remember there's several years when your first parents take you out for that probably up until you're 11 or 12 or 13 or so. It's a lot of fun, and you really anticipate it. Again, when you're up to 12 years old or 13, you're going out with your friends, so it's a really fun evening, and inevitably you go out with a group, and before you know it, you end up looking for reasons that scary things might be happening. You make it more than it is. You end up having a nice kind of spooky evening. You'll be told, that one looks strange. You're just looking for reasons to make it a little more exciting, and it's a lot of fun. And then you get older, and you start thinking about how silly you might look to the girl that you fancy if you're out, if she sees you with a skull or something it, so you stop dressing up.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm kind of half kidding, but it was really a lot of fun to go out on Halloween as a kid. It was a big deal. And you said it, probably next to Christmas and your birthday, but next to Christmas, because you could dress up and it was accepted, and you could just celebrate and have fun. And again, then at that time you'd come home with a nice little sack of sweets.
Yes.
You know, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's
you go.
Halloween and the difference between the past and now, and here and there, so to speak. So the tradition of Halloween, and I think it's probably Halloween's only going to get bigger as well. And welcome in the spirits as well. If it's true that the veil between the two worlds are so thin that they do cross over, just be safe and protect yourself from the bad spirits. But welcome in the ancestors, your grandmother, because apparently they come down to visit as well. So that's another side of Halloween that I found very interesting and finding out about. Yes. So thanks very much, Tim.
You're very welcome, Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. And that was Tim with Halloween. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode on Halloween. If you have liked it, please click the like button. And if you're new to this community, please subscribe and press the bell so you'll be notified every time I release a new video. So thanks for watching. Come back again, and happy Halloween.